Welcome back, South Philly Sauce, an Audacy original brought to you by 94 WIP and Jack Daniels, Ashlyn Sullivan, Al Morganti here with you. And 16 games remain on this season, and the Flyers, they get a much-needed win over the San Jose Sharks. We will think 3 weeks from now, it was 2 points, it was needed, but a day removed. My gosh, it wasn't pretty, a little bit concerning, but 2 points is 2 points.
Yeah, Ashlyn, 2 points is 2 points. It was a little concerning, but we said before the game, when we did our pregame show, that team had lost by 1 goal 3 or 4 times in the last week. And this is when teams, it's not just a cliche, teams that are out of it play kind of loose, and you saw what happened. What I really liked about the game was that they didn't get kind of all scrambly and that they got disciplined in the third period. They took bad penalties in the first couple of periods trying to just generate energy against the bad team. But then they got really disciplined in the third period, and that helped out. Mind you, it's against a team that's really struggling, but that could have been a case where things got out of control a little bit, and that San Jose power play was starting to go. So if you want to look for good signs against a bad team, I guess that's the way you'd put it. Goaltender played well. They calmed down in the third period. They got through without Tortorella behind the bench, and they got the 2 points. It's a pretty basic formula to go forward.
It is, and there's some things that need to be cleaned up before you get to this brutal schedule coming up. I think concerning is the amount of power play goals they're all of a sudden giving up on a penalty kill that was so successful all season long. Granted, you want to get Tampa, one of the best power plays in the league, and San Jose, for their record, has a pretty good power play of their own. So you got to get that cleaned up. The amount of penalties, and you talk about the discipline in the third period, but I guess especially against these good teams coming up, you got to start earlier staying disciplined because it just gets out of hand at times with this team.
Yeah, and I think you saw that in this game. Konechny, he runs on energy, and you saw that in the first couple. Mind you, he's coming back from injury, so he's got to generate energy too. And he was kind of desperate, but then it calmed down in the third period. So that was a good sign. But no, you can't depend. Your penalty kill isn't going to run at that percentage all year long. And as the games get more important down the stretch here, you just can't be giving up that many power play chances against you. And and it's almost like we got spoiled. Like we're expecting a shorty to kind of get their energy back. We're expecting, oh yeah, they're going to get a shorthanded goal. It's going to happen. Lawton or Konechny or somebody's going to cash it in. But you better not bank on that. You'd better bank on the fact maybe you shut down the other power play. Maybe you just don't give up so many power plays.
Yeah, that would be nice. And I guess what's promising, and it leads us to our next topic, is guys getting back on track at the crucial time. Is you saw Owen Tippett with a goal. You saw Travis Konechny with 2 assists. And I love Travis Konechny post-game admitting to our broadcast that there's still a little bit of rust with his injury. It's not fully knocked off. But if the Flyers are going to make the playoffs, it needs to be where these guys get a streak going right now and sustain it the next 16 games. You're looking at Owen Tippett. You're looking at Travis Konechny, a little bit of Morgan Frost as well. But if they make it, it's because these guys are clicking at the right time.
Yeah, you're looking at Konechny as their star guy. We're going to be talking about a lot of stars coming up. And the Flyers is supposed to be that guy for the Flyers is supposed to be Konechny. And that, he's talked about Russ coming back. And that is true with whatever injury he had. I'm assuming it's kind of a core type of thing, an oblique or whatever that he really had to get his shooting game back in order. He made some nice passes. So, that is going to be really integral. You'd hope Forster would have kept going in the direction he was going with Konechny out. But you mentioned the name Tippett, and he's such a big part of this coming back. 8 shots on goal against San Jose. That was really important. And not just, I think, Ashlyn, we've seen him generate his own shot. If it was in the NBA, that would be the whole thing, generate your own shot. This being the NHL, that speed that he has, in addition to using it to generate his own shot, so to speak, he can also use it to get in position to get a great pass, as we saw that last game from Konechny. So he's really, really important in this drive. To me, as important as Konechny.
100%. It's the stars, and you need them to click right now with this brutal schedule coming up. But before we get to that, so John Tortorella mentioned it, serving a 2-game suspension. So against the San Jose Sharks as well as Toronto at home. Unfortunate, both of those games are at home. But we talked to players in the locker room, and they were saying, we're not going to miss a beat. Torts is a very much a hands-off coach that allows his assistants to really run the show. We saw that last night. I thought Rocky Thompson, surprisingly very candid about the power play struggles this season in postgame when he was doing the press conference. He was asked why some changes on the power play were happening, why some new guys were getting opportunities. And he said, well, our power play stinks. And this was a good power play guy at one point in his career, so I'm going to add him. It's not going to hurt our power play because it's no good anyway. This is the power play coach saying this.
Yeah, not probably where I would have gone.
I love the honesty.
It's not a cover your butt kind of situation, but I mean, we all know that we've been talking about it for 2 years. And that's why, it's like, okay, it was like, well, we'll do anything to get this better. And, you're right. It was honest, but you wonder why it's been, I often think it's just too many combinations going on with that power play and who's going to do what. But yeah, whatever it takes to get it rolling here. And I thought they actually, I thought they did some good things on the power play. Even one goal didn't count as a power play, but it was the, goalie out. So basically an extra man situation. Mm-hmm. So maybe it's late in the season, but maybe they, I hate to say stumbled on something, but they may have stumbled on something.
It worked, finally.
Yeah, to come in. I mean, bring somebody in and what the heck, use him, see what goes on.
That's truly what it sounds like. It's like a new guy. Yeah, let's plug him in. Yeah. Let's see what happens. That new guy in this situation is Dennis Garavano.
Garavano. Yeah.
Let's see if it sticks. But I loved the honesty. And speaking of honesty, let's do Lost in the Sauce. And this one hurts because it's a guy, Al, that we respect and has been so great for the Flyers. But Cam Atkinson, I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, lost, not even on the roster. So really, not on the roster, but bench for the game. So that's lost in the sauce. And Ashlyn, I could tell the game against Tampa. I mean, when you've played in the league as many years as he has, and you finally get in a fight, that's frustration.
Not a fighter.
It's just frustration on what's gone on. Trying to find his game, trying to find his hands, trying to find his place. And it's not like, I know people like to say, well, with John Tortorella, sometimes you're harsh on players with all, but Atkinson's one of his favorite players. Mm-hmm. And, the coach Tortorella knows no other way than to push that way. Like, you got to get more from you, but I can't keep waiting for it to happen. And frankly, he really hasn't provided the spark that you need when he's been in the lineup. So he's done everything for it. But this is getting now at that point where if you're Cam Atkinson, you're starting to wonder, like, what's my career path here on what's going on? If this lineup here, I can't be a huge part of this in big games. So I do think, though, despite the fact that he's lost right now, I do think that he's a guy that if you're looking for some magic, I do think it's like, what? There's still something there. We can use him in this situation. And the entire locker room's waiting for, when's that moment going to come where he scores that big goal, whether it's whatever you spot you're in a game, in a situation, it's still there. And that would be such a big boost. But for right now, you get benched in this past game. You wonder what's going on with these big games coming up. But I think he's still there. He's still a weapon that I think Tortorella at a time will say, we're gonna need something special, and he's a special player. So hopefully he emerges from it, because we can all see that there should be a huge moment in a game against these big teams coming up where a veteran like him provides that spark.
Right, him or Sean Couturier, but for Cam Atkinson,
Couturier's game has. I talked to Coots for a long time about where he was in the lineup, trying to get back up in the lineup, the top 6 guy to make big plays, to get big face-off wins. But his play has dipped, and you wonder if coming back from those injuries, hasn't starting to take a toll on him a little bit, because his game perked up some, and now later in the season, it looks like he's struggled. He struggled to, frankly, keep up with the pace of games at points. Right. But he's not a guy that's going to surrender anything. And like Atkinson, big moments, big face-offs, big situations in games. If they're going to make the playoffs, he's going to be a part of it.
Right. And the whole with both of those guys, I have to imagine it's an ego check, because you're so used to playing big minutes, a lot of ice time. And it seems like their career, at least with this team, has more shifted to key moments, which you obviously need veteran presence for. But I got to imagine that shift is a little difficult. And I'm sure we'll talk about them at some point in the locker room about this. But that has to be tough for both of those players at this point in their career, when it's no secret. You look around the locker room, guys are just a lot younger.
Yeah, that's a key point, Ashlyn. But what's really important here is that all year long, John Tortorella and the coaching staff have talked about having a good locker room, having a good climate, whatever you want to call it, culture. If you're a veteran player and things aren't going your way, you can't be the guy that complains.
Right.
That's what ruins things. And that's where I think when this staff, this management team talks about we have a good combination of players, we have a good climate, this is what they're talking about. Even when you're in situations like that, you can't get selfish about it and mope.
Right.
And for Couturier, especially for me, if I'm like named the captain and my ice time dips or whatever, I'm not thrilled. But I have to, as a team leader, and Atkinson also, look out for the bigger picture and not be the guy that kind of ruins the culture of that room.
Right. And the bigger picture right now is just getting in the playoffs. That's what everyone is talking about right now. And my loss in the sauce, and it's kind of a in-betweener, is Morgan Frost, because he's coming off a great game against the San Jose Sharks. We interviewed him at intermission, and he was very candid about what needed to be cleaned up, very aware of his game and the Flyers game as a whole. Before that San Jose game, John Tortorella did not hold back with Morgan Frost all season long. What can he improve on? Consistency. What do you want to see him be more consistent at? Everything. And Morgan, he's such a great guy, and he's so great to talk to and so aware of himself. It drives you nuts because you see the potential there, and you see a game like the San Jose Shark game, and you're wondering, why can't that happen every game? And then he'll go absent for a week. And it's like, no wonder he's driving his coaching staff crazy.
Yeah, he's good. I mean, he obviously grew up in a good climate to develop as a player, family, whatever, because he, like those two veterans we just talked about, he doesn't whine when anything happens bad. With a skill level like he has, he doesn't whine at all. But I think, Ashlyn, when a big game against San Jose is one thing, a game against a team like that really struggles. So what I think they need is a big game in the games coming up. A lot of his better games have been against non-competitive teams, if you will, or lower level teams. So I think this is where it's do or die for Morgan Frost on the schedule that's coming up. You can't have that terrific, 3-zone sauce pass that he has to set up a Farabee goal, and then have a non-compete, but non-factor game in the ones coming up. This is where, if you really want to establish yourself with the coaching staff, if you really want to establish yourself that, I'm not just a here and hit or miss guy, it's going to be in big game. This is where, it's not actually the playoffs, but for a guy like this, it's the playoffs. Mm-hmm. What kind of player are you going to be in these big moments against very good teams?
Yeah, it sets the tone for your career. Can you show up in the biggest moments? And those are the guys that get the big contracts and get paid one day. And hey, maybe Morgan Frost is one of those guys. And that leads us to what is coming up. And I don't even want to talk about it. It's so scary to look at. 2 against Toronto, 2 against Boston, 1 against Carolina, all locked in playoff teams. That is why those 2 points against San Jose were so crucial, because you look at the schedule and you wonder, how is this going to work? And you look at the Islanders' schedule, who are coming on the heels of the Flyers for that 3rd spot in the Metro. Their schedule is much easier these next 5 games than the Flyers.
Yeah, it's a killer schedule, and it's especially dangerous when you consider what's happened to the Flyers against star players. Austin Matthews with Toronto. You've got star players in Boston that come in and can kill you. Marchand, they've got a bunch of them. A Pasternak to come in. You look at that and say, how are we going to deal with that? That's where we have to deal with that. That's where my worry is, the defensive core the Flyers have right now. When you have to put in Stahl and Johnson, who just got here, against players like that, perhaps that's a dangerous situation. The optimism I have is, in addition to connecting, and we mentioned Frost here and whatever, is the goaltender, Ersson. Now, after the last game, in player interviews in the locker room, I'm getting to more and more like this goaltender. He made a big save against San Jose. And then after the game, he said, well, that's what you want to do. You want to be the guy in big moments that provides that big save. Mm-hmm. This more and more, the more I listen to him and watch him, I guess, is more important. It's like he craves that. like some guys might say, well, I got to go against this goaltender, against that team. And it's like, he wants it, which leads me to believe he was always kind of lurking behind when everybody thought Carter Hart was going to be the guy. There's an inner competition there, and he never rocked the boat, so to speak. But you can tell he is that kind of guy that just behind those husky blue eyes or whatever, for look like one of those Alaskan husky eyes that he's got. I think there's a killer in terms of competitive nature. Yeah. In terms of that coolness that he shows, he really is competitive. And for him to step out and say, well, I made yes, that was a big save there, but that's what I'm supposed to do. That's what's great about being a goaltender. You can have those moments. So that's my optimism for what's coming up. And it's going to be a hell of if he can manage to get through this, it's an incredible task. That's the optimism I have going into these games.
Yes, at the least, force a couple overtimes, get a couple points, make it work. And the sad part is, even after this 5 games, it doesn't get easier. These last remaining 16 games, almost all of them against playoff teams. So the Flyers are going to have to play their best hockey of the season to get in. But what a situation to be in. It makes it exciting every night. And that is South Philly Sauce, an Audacy original, brought to you by 94 WIP and Jack Daniels. We will see you later on this week.